So it's crazy to think about, but the Apple Card was announced roughly 5 years ago now at this point, and I've been a user of the Apple Card since day one. So in this video, what I want to do is talk about the Apple Card, the ins and outs of it, the perks, the benefits of having it, but mostly talk about my review, what I think about it, and finally, if I do recommend getting this Apple Card as somebody who really loves to talk about credit cards and being a credit card enthusiast, and I consider myself kind of a travel hacker. So without further ado, let's talk about the Apple Card, but before we get started, definitely consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a channel member to get some awesome monthly wallpapers like this one, as well as some additional perks like live podcasts, office hours, and much more. But without further ado, let's get into this Apple Card and see if it's still worth it in 2024. So Apple decided to get into this credit card game by partnering up with Goldman Sachs, and that in its own right is its own story because they have been bleeding money with that partnership, but Apple is saying that it's going nowhere, and I think eventually it's going to go up for bid later in 2025 in terms of what the partnership bank is going to be for the Apple Card. But I will say this isn't financial advice, but I personally am not too worried about that partnership. I do not think they'll get to a point where the Apple Card will cease to exist, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on, but not something to kind of worry about long term. But in terms of the perks and benefits that you get, of course, the hardware of the Apple Card is kind of what stood out to most people, which is, again, funny because it's literally just a card and it doesn't change the value or the use case or the functionality of this Apple Card, but it does have a nice little clank when you do drop it. It is made out of titanium, it's got that nice white color, and as you can see, mine has been through the ringer over the last 5 years. But in terms of the actual perks that you get from this card, what's nice about this is that it has some easy multipliers. It's kind of like a set it and forget it, and you don't have to think too much in terms of what category of spend you're using this card on. So first and foremost, you get 3% cash back on all things Apple related. So that's hardware, software, services, apps, anything that comes from the Apple ecosystem will be a 3% cash back. So you can buy an iPhone for $1,000, get $30 cash back. You can buy an in-app purchase for $1 and get 3 cents cash back. So it all depends on how this kind of goes, and it is nice because it is daily cash back. And what's nice about the cash back, which is kind of a superpower of the Apple Card, is that it's daily. So at the end of every single day, after you make those purchases, usually the next day, that cash is readily available, if not sooner than that. Now, the catch-all category is going to be this 2% cashback on all Apple Pay transactions. So if you use your phone to use Apple Pay with the Apple Card itself, you will get 2% cashback, and that's across any category. And now here in the US, in 2019 it was a different story, but here in 2024, we're now dealing with 85 to 90% of all merchants accepting Apple Pay, whether it is physically in store or even at online retailers. So this 2% cashback category is becoming more of a catch-all category, which is something that's very competitive, even at the $0 annual fee when it comes to the Apple Card. You usually have to pay a little bit of an annual fee for certain credit cards that give you that 2% cashback, catch-all as we like to call it. But then after that, if there are situations where you cannot use Apple Pay and you're outside of that, then you can just actually use a physical card, of course, and then be able to then get 1% cash back, which again, most credit cards at any price point, whether it's a $0 or a $700 annual fee, will give you that 1% cash back across everything. Now, Apple does have some partnerships like with Nike and Panera and some other different outlets that does give you 3% cash back and even 6% cash back depending on what promotions are running, but the standard is going to be 3% cash back on Apple categories, 2% cash back on Apple Pay transactions, and 1% cash back on everything else. And another big perk of the Apple Card is that it's a zero-fee annual card, so you're not paying anything to own it. There's no foreign transaction fees, no late fees, so you can take this overseas, you can pay a little bit late, and they're not going to charge you extra for doing that, because again, Apple at the end of the day is probably the first credit card situation where they're trying to educate the consumer on what it means to pay your credit card off in full. So now that's a perfect segue into the application and what really sets the Apple Card apart from everybody else, because for right now, there are other cards with a $0 annual fee. They'll give you 1.5x back or up to 3x back on dining, depending on what you're using it for. So there probably are better 3% cashback categories unless you're buying a ton of Apple products every single day, then that's going to be worth it for you. But the superpower of the Apple Card is going to be the Apple Wallet, which I do have a video on explaining everything, but also the Apple Card virtually on your phone. Because like I mentioned earlier, this is the first card that will try to educate you on having to pay off your card in full every single month. Most people, unfortunately, are in that revolving door of paying the minimum fee of their credit card that eventually starts to build interest, and then you start to owe more money on that card, on more money that you already have on that card. So you end up going into this hole and digging yourself deeper into more debt with most credit card situations, and that's how banks make money. So with Apple's software implementation, you have the little scroll wheel, which lets you know how much you would owe depending on how much you pay off. So of course there is a minimum monthly payment that you have to abide by, but after that, if you spend, let's say you owe $500 and you can only afford to pay $200, that's still more than the minimum payment. So to let you know, hey, if you use the minimum payment, this is how much you're going to owe the following month on that money. But if you pay $200 or $250 of that $500, then this is how much you'll owe in interest payments. So to let you know that it lowers the more you pay off. And then of course, if you pay it off in full, which I fully recommend, then you don't owe any money in interest, and it's again a free card to have. Some other nice perks that you get from being an Apple Card user is going to be their high yield savings account, which as of recording this, I think it's at 4.35% APY, and you can put your daily cash to go directly into that savings account, which I've done in the past. I recently emptied it out, but I do have a little bit in there as well that you can see growing over time and building on that quote unquote compound interest. So that is always nice to see. And again, that savings account is only available for Apple Card users. One more perk that you get by using an Apple Card is that when you are purchasing Apple products, especially expensive Apple hardware, you can actually finance it over 12 months or 6 months, depending on how large that purchase is, at zero interest. So let's say you want to buy an iPhone and it's $1,200 for that iPhone. Instead of paying it all up front and having to pay it with cash or pay it with a credit card, you can finance that iPhone with zero interest, meaning it'll cost you $100 a month for that 12 months. Now, this still goes towards your credit utilization. If you're somebody that wants to learn about that, you can definitely do so. But at least you know that it's only going to cost you $100 a month, and you're not paying any extra money on interest or kind of late fees or anything like that. That's just what it's going to be over the next 12 months. And it's all categorized nicely inside of Apple's Apple Wallet. And then, of course, if you do want to, you can pay it off faster if that's something that you want to do. So I'm going to leave a video linked down below for you guys to check out that really runs the gamut on the entire Apple Wallet, and maybe I'll do an updated video because there's a lot of awesome features in the Apple Wallet and I feel like people aren't maximizing it fully, but I just wanted to review mostly the card itself in this video. But now I do want to get into the section of who this is for, who I would recommend get this Apple Card, because again, for me personally, I'm definitely more so on the points and miles game. Like, I get credit cards and then redeem those credit card points for luxury travel and staying at really nice hotels that I otherwise wouldn't spend cash on. I'm not a big cashback guy to begin with, so the only thing that I put on this card, 99% of my expenses are going to be Apple products. If I'm financing a laptop or an iPad, like I put my brand new M4 iPad Pro on this Apple Card, and I'm just paying it monthly with maybe a little bit extra to kind of get rid of that as fast as I can. But any other purchase that I make on a day-to-day basis is going to go on other kind of miles and points credit cards like a Chase or a Capital One or an American Express, so I can earn those points and then travel. And I'll leave some other YouTubers down below for you guys to check out if you guys want to get into that game. But I would recommend this for beginners, right? Because for the most part, from the data points that I've seen, 650, 640 credit score will get you approved for this card with a decent credit limit, and then you can start to learn about credit cards. That is what I love about the Apple Card, is that it's not trying to make money off of you by making you pay late fees or making you only spend the minimum payment, or again, they're not trying to trick you into getting into more debt with them. It's actually the opposite. Apple wants you to learn how APR interest works. They want you to learn what it's going to cost you if you don't pay it off in full, and they kind of gamify a little bit by adding different colors in the scroll wheel and being able to, again, just make it visibly appealing to actually pay off your card in full, with even a little animation that'll completely white out the card if you have paid off your entire card in full and you have no debt on it. So I would recommend this for most beginners here in the US because, again, 2% cashback on all Apple Pay transactions, again, is pretty much every single category now at this point, like for gas, for groceries. You can even tell people to bring the credit card terminal to you when you are paying at dining, so you get 2% cash back there, and it pretty much encompasses everything. Aside from that, you do get the 1% cash back on everything else, and finally, like I mentioned, you do get 3% cash back on all Apple-related purchases. But that'll do it for this video, everybody. Leave a comment down below. Are you an Apple Card user? Have you been using it for 5 years? Did you just get it? Are you in the market for a new Apple credit card? Let me know in the comment down below, because I'm always curious to know what people are using from a credit card standpoint, and if people are using the Apple Card outside of getting Apple products. Because again, I only use it for Apple purchases. But that'll do it for this video, everybody. If you did make it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch more videos like this one, click on this one right here, because that's what I think YouTube wants you to see. And then if not, I picked this video for you right here. But until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here. Peace.